Hey, and what is up, movie viewers? Dena Mo Views and Reviews here. Asking, what you watching? Well, today I am watching You People. This movie stars Eddie Murphy, Nia Long, Jonah Hill, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Lauren London, David Duchovny, and it is written by Kenya Barris and Jonah Hill. Directed by Kenya Barris, produced by Kenya Barris, Michelle Deschamps, Matt Dines, Allison Goodwin, Kevin Misher, Jonah Hill, Sharice M. Hewitt, Andy Berman, Haley Rothstein, and David Hyman. I am gonna tell you straight off, this movie came across as just another look who's coming to dinner. The film began with Jonah Hill, who plays Ezra in this movie. Ezra is a Caucasian, and he works in a finance. He's in financial services, but he really wants to continue to be a co-host for a podcast that he does on the side with one of his peculiar black female friends. A podcast that delves into black culture and black history. Immediately, straight from the beginning, the film focuses on Ezra's religious background, showing him and his family in a temple having conversation during the services. It is hilarious. So as Ezra is leaving work, one day he hops into the back of what he thinks is an Uber, only to find out that the driver, whose name is Amira, is not working for Uber, even though she looks just like the Uber driver that Ezra was sent a pickup on his phone, and she is driving the exact same kind of car that he was told the Uber driver would be driving. So he has the message, and he jumps in the back of her car, and she's like, "Who are you? Why are you in my car?" And they have this heated conversation about this mix-up, but eventually, after Ezra shows Amira the message, the two exchange numbers. They, all's forgiven, and they start to, once they change numbers, they decide to start dating. And the movie moves along so fast, it fast forwards 6 months. That's pretty quick. And it's 6 months later, and Ezra has gotten pretty serious and wants to ask Amira to marry him. And he decides that it is time that they met one another's parents. So Ezra's parents are supposed to be Jewish, and Amira's parents are supposed to be Muslim. So they decide that it's time for them to meet each other's parents, which they themselves obviously did not practice some of the religious beliefs to a T that their parents did, because neither would have engaged in some of the premarital things I think they were doing. So it really was more about the parents' perspective on and regarding their union. So Ezra takes Amir to meet his parents. Shelley is his mother's name, and Arnold is his father's name, which according to how they behave, they are not really around a lot of black people, or not in the presence of black people or people of color in their lives. Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays Jonah Hill's mother, or Ezra's mother, and her name is Shelley once again. And she comes off as, in my opinion, just another Karen. Dreyfus always seems to find herself in these kind of roles, till it is just very common to see her being this wisecracking character, almost clueless, wealthy Caucasian Jewish woman. His father, Arnold, seems to have an unhealthy fixation with Exhibit, even telling Amira that Exhibit has braids and asking her, do she remember the show Pimp My Ride? That was a blast, he says. He clearly has some issues, starting with that fixation on Exhibit. Now, Ezra did take Amira to meet his parents. He took her to their home. and their home is in Brentwood. And from the very beginning, starting with the greeting, it was just awkward and kind of weird. It was a bit uncomfortable. But to begin with, his parents are just, they're just doing way too much. His mother greets her with, "Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. I love your hair, love your fingernails. Look at these rings." And even Ezra's father telling Amira, "I like your braids." Of course, there is nothing wrong with compliment, but it was clearly them just doing way too much. Almost as if they were meeting an alien or something. Too many compliments can sometimes come across as being fake, phony, and disingenuous. And behaving as if they'd never, ever had the privilege of meeting a person of color before. So the interaction is a little obstinate, to say the least, but they managed to make it through the visit. Ezra decides to ask Amira's parents to meet him at, of all places, Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Really, Ezra? That to me was just too stereotypical. It just was too stereotypical. Ezra is clearly uncomfortable sitting at the table with Amira's parents. Now, Amira's parents are Akbar, who is played by Eddie Murphy, and her mother is played by Nia Long, and her name is Fatima. Now, Ezra, he's just so uncomfortable speaking to them at the table. He's talking about Jesus is half black and half white. He's just making a complete fool of himself. He proceeded to make weird, different comments that were just so out of place instead of just being himself. So finally, Amira's father asks Ezra, "So do you hang out in the hood all the time, or do you just come up here for our food and our women?" And Ezra was clearly, as I said, very uncomfortable. He goes on to express that he wants to marry Amira, and that's why he invited them there. But he goes even further and say that they'll have mixed race children, and mixed race people are really awesome. You have Mariah, Derek Jeter, and of course you have the GOAT. He was mixed race, our guy. And Akbar is like, whom are you talking about? He says, the legend who? He says, Malcolm X. He was, again, just doing too much. Which, of course, bringing Malcolm X up, I'm like, as being mixed was weird in itself. Like, what telling that fib has to do with anything? His mother was, of course, of mixed race. His father was a black man. I just found it odd they decided to include that statement at all. And we know Hollywood, they do nothing without an agenda. Anyway, he states he wants to marry Amira, if that is okay. Akbar responds, "So you want to marry my daughter?" And he just lets him know, "You can try." Ezra and Amira invites both sides of their families to their home for dinner. And during the dinner, there were some very interesting conversations. They spoke about slavery, wealth, and how it was received on the back of slavery. Clearly a lot of tension was there between the two families, and they were having some uncomfortable conversations at the dinner table. But for the most part, it could have went better. I mean, we have seen this ending or similar endings before. It was quite predictable to me. And I personally saw nothing wrong with Akbar calling out Ezra's friends, weird friends that were involved in drug usage. I certainly would not want my daughter marrying or even involved with or even engaged to that kind of person that engages in certain behaviors when he is hanging out with his friends or even hanging around some of his questionable buddies. So even though it was written to make it look like Akbar was being vindictive by joining him in celebrating his bachelor party, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I'm speaking as a parent, of course. He was simply there to observe. how he and his friends interacted. But those particular friends' behavior was just, it would just be unacceptable to me. I don't ask to marry my daughter if you're doing that stuff, okay? And this is why I gave this movie a 1.5 star. Okay, perhaps a 2. I'm gonna give it a 2. Only because some of it was interesting. It just wasn't what I expected it to be from the way the movie was hyped up. I was expecting it to deal with some deeper issues, or honestly focus on the conflicts between religious beliefs, or even two families from different racial and religious backgrounds coming together. I thought it would be something to try to better understand the others, and how it could benefit the two people that were supposedly in love. I think it really missed its mark for me. I felt there was no real chemistry at all between Londen and Hill. It just wasn't a believable relationship to me. It just felt like it was just acting. It just didn't pull me in and make me feel like a real relationship was happening. And even using Minister Farrakhan's name, or him supposedly giving Akbar a fez, a kufi from his very own head, giving it to Akbar, it made it very interesting when it was being used in the reels to get you to watch it. But the plot just went nowhere. Which, by the way, Ezra and his mom conveniently ended up, some quote, mistakenly, end of quote, setting it on fire, throwing it on the floor, stomping on it, and pouring water all over it. Was that supposed to represent something? Yeah, you people missed its mark. And it truly seems the writers or producers could not decide if they just wanted it to come across as sarcastic, not edgy, or actually dealing with any of the topics that may be of concern in such a relationship. It seems as it didn't want to deal with some of the real important issues that couples of different religious faith, or different races, or different classes may have to face. It was just something sarcastically thrown together. It would have been nice to see real issues actually addressed, minus the stereotypes and agendas. Ezra just never came across as someone ready to be in a real marriage for me. He was kind of idiotic and childish almost. And I could not help but think perhaps they could have chosen a different actress to play Amira. Now, Londen is she's a beautiful girl, but she just looks so close in age, in my opinion, to Nia Long. So I would just look at this for what it is. It's a comedy and not much more. Although there are some very funny moments in this movie, I'm just not sure if it actually hit its mark. Now, You People is rated R for language throughout, some sexual material, and drug content. And if you would like to check out You People, you most certainly can, because it is now streaming on Netflix. Be sure to subscribe and leave me a comment on your thoughts on this movie. This has been Dena Views and Reviews. Like, share, and subscribe. And join me for my next review and our recommendation. And I want you to remember, it's my view. Now, what you watching?